What happens when access to vital technology and resources is determined just as much by geopolitical agreements as by market demand? From new transatlantic frameworks for critical minerals to dynamic rolling thresholds for semiconductor exports, the rules of global trade continue to change.
Welcome to This Week in Trade, bringing you a quick roundup of the latest international trade news and analysis from Goida Limited's director George Riddell and the Geneva Trade Platform.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Trade for the final week of April 2026. Let's begin with the United States and Europe. On the 24th of April, the US and the EU signed a new Memorandum of Understanding alongside an action plan concerning critical minerals. While this does not yet establish a binding transatlantic treaty, the intent is highly operational. The two jurisdictions are exploring coordinated market mechanisms, including reference price-based tools like border-adjusted floor prices, as well as rapid response mechanisms for supply disruptions. Meanwhile, in North America, preparations for the upcoming July 2026 USMCA joint review are accelerating. The US and Mexico have scheduled their first official bilateral negotiating round for the week of the 25th of May. They're focusing heavily on strengthening rules of origin for industrial goods and collaborating on critical minerals. Underscoring this trend, the US recently published procedures that tie reduced tariff rates for automotive steel and aluminium directly to strict North American melt and pour or smelt and cast requirements. Meanwhile, Canada has established a new 24-member trade committee, which includes business, labour and political leaders to support Canada's position in the USMCA talks. For North American manufacturers, particularly in the automotive and industrial sectors, the review of the USMCA could be highly significant. Turning to technology, the US House is advancing legislation to tighten export controls on advanced semiconductors. The most notable development is the proposed Semiconductor Controls Adjusted to Limit Exports, or SCALE Act. If passed, this legislation will create a rolling technical threshold for exports. Instead of relying on a static product list, exports to specific countries will be limited to chips that operate at up to 110% of the performance of what those adversary nations can already manufacture domestically at scale. Furthermore, license applications would face a presumption of denial if the exports allow adversary-controlled AI hardware to exceed 5% of the total US AI hardware base. Tech companies should prepare for a much more dynamic compliance environment. Export eligibility could soon fluctuate based on real-world intelligence regarding foreign manufacturing capabilities. Turning our attention to European geopolitics, the Council of the EU has just agreed on its 20th package of sanctions against Russia and Belarus. This represents the largest package of listings in 2 years, adding 120 individuals. More notably, however, the EU is activating its anti-circumvention tool for the very first time. They are strictly prohibiting the export of computer numerical control machines and radios to Kazakhstan, targeting the high risk of these specific products being re-exported to Russia. The scope of restricted goods is also expanding in both directions. The EU is adding export bans on a wide range of industrial products, including laboratory glassware, high-performance lubricants, metal production tools, and industrial tractors. Conversely, they're also restricting the import of Russian revenue generators, such as raw materials, metals, chemicals, and placing new quotas on ammonia. Finally, the maritime and third-party impacts are widening. The package lays the groundwork for a future maritime services ban, and also adds new port access bans, and crucially extending its restrictive measures to cover several Chinese entities. Meanwhile, China's Ministry of Commerce has just added 7 EU entities to its own export control list, effective immediately. The activation of the EU's anti-circumvention tool marks a structural shift in how these sanctions are being enforced. Businesses will no longer be able to simply screen their direct buyers, as it impacts how end-user audits should be conducted. Finally, looking at the Indo-Pacific, India continues to integrate more deeply into global supply chains. On the 27th of April, India and New Zealand officially signed a new free trade agreement. India's expanding network of trade agreements presents an increasingly viable and cost-effective option for manufacturing and regional sourcing. Following the recent state visit, India and South Korea announced a joint strategic vision to expedite the upgrade of their existing economic partnership. This upgraded partnership will likely focus on supply chain resilience in critical sectors like semiconductors, automobiles, shipbuilding, and telecoms equipment.
Those are the headlines from This Week in Trade. To go deeper, check out more comprehensive breakdown of these and other developments on Georgia's LinkedIn. This is a new series we'll be looking to evolve and expand based on your feedback, refining what we're presenting, and adding new voices. Let us know in the comments below and via the contact form on GTP's website how we can make this a more relevant and useful accompaniment to your coffee.